Lowe's knows how to help you get the most out of your store run. That's why members save more with My Lowe's Rewards. Earn points towards My Lowe's money on eligible purchases. Get access to member-only deals and free member gifts. Plus, unlock free standard shipping when you reach Silver Key status. So what are you waiting for? Join for free today. Lowe's. We help. You save. Loyalty program subject to terms and conditions. Details at lowes.com/terms. Subject to change.
Hello, and thank you for joining us for this episode of Raising Me. This is a podcast where we talk about all things parenting. And today, it's about blended families of all different kinds. I'm Adrienne Stein, and a quick thank you to our sponsor, Maine Health, as we get started here. Okay, blended families, they can be wonderful and extremely complicated, often at the same time, whether you're co-parenting with an ex or stepping into that role of a step-parent, or helping your kids adjust to new siblings. The dynamic here can be a lot. And here's the thing that I also really left thinking about too. Blended families aren't just about remarriage, which we often think about. They can be so many different types of relationships. Maybe it's grandparents helping to raise kids, aunts, uncles, even close friends stepping in to help to raise a child, all leading to very unique dynamics. Today, we're talking with Shannan King with the G.E.A.R Parent Network. That is a parent-run organization helping to empower parents and caregivers and provide support for families with children with emotional and behavioral health needs. She'll help us navigate these blended family relationships in a way that focuses on love, respect, and stability, and ultimately doing what we can to make them work. Shannan, I'm so glad you're here today with us to talk about blended families. Can look like so many different things. But when we talk in terms of a blended family, what exactly is that? What are some common characteristics when it comes to a blended family?
The first thing that you usually think of with blended families would be like the step family, or what we traditionally call the step family. So you'd have a step parent, maybe some step siblings, all kind of blending together to create that blended family. That's the more traditional that you would think of, but there's others.
And what would some of the others look like?
So some other ones could look like living with other family members, or like, let's say, grandparents, so that you have mom and dad and or mom and kids living with grandparents who may or may not also still have kids at home. It can look like friends living together and raising their children together. It can look a lot of different ways. So the kind of definition of blended families is changing a bit.
It is changing. There are some challenges that blended families can face. What are some of the more common challenges you've encountered in working with families?
A lot of the challenges come around, kind of that mixing of families in general. So it can be a lot of conflict, like conflict among the parents on who's our parents and the other person, who's in charge when, what are the rules, who's making the rules. Could be trying to get kids living together that aren't used to living together, and there's conflict there. So it can come with a lot of conflict, challenges, emotional changes. There's quite a lot of different factors at play.
Yeah, so many layers. If one of our listeners is thinking, this is coming up for me, or I'm right in the thick of it, what are some first steps that parents can do before or as they're leading into a blended family situation with their children?
So conversation. It's good to have conversations around expectations on both ends. So let's say you're looking at the traditional blending of families, or what we would consider blending of families, and it's a mom and or a dad who are now getting together, or stepdad, stepmom, they're now getting together and they each have their own children. In those sorts of situations, you have children around the new circumstances, what's going on, what's going to happen, what are the expectations. And then also, as the parents that are coming together, you're going to want to have those conversations well with each other. Like, what am I expecting of you in your role with my children or in this family? And so you want to kind of have those conversations early and set those expectations up, and then be communicating those with the children as well. So, for instance, primary recommendation would be each parent would be in charge of their own children in terms of like discipline, let's say. That would be a pretty common one that parents would have conflict over. So, best advice would be each parent is responsible for disciplining their own children in the home, and that the other parent isn't expected to do that. And so these are definitely the types of conversations that you want to have ahead of time. So that way you can kind of know what to do. And obviously, that's not necessarily always going to be possible. Sometimes the parent is not there. So, again, having conversations around what would be the expectation in that case. Like, are they expected to try to handle it the way that you would handle it? Or do they have a little bit more freedom? And it adding in layers and layers and layers, depending on the age of the children. If you have a small child, there could be safety concerns, and an adult is going to need to step in. Not that doesn't happen with older kids too, but it's more likely for the younger kids that you're going to have to do a little bit more hands-on parenting from both parties on that. But then teenagers, they may not want the other person stepping in. So you're going to deal with just a lot of different varying types of things based on the ages of the kids involved.
Yeah, it sounds like just a lot of communication and setting not just expectations, but realistic expectations long before move-in day when everybody's unpacking their things. But, even just the idea of introducing new family members to each other, like any guidance on the best way to approach that?
Mhm.
Hopefully it's not you're not meeting each other moving day, but and that there's been a process, getting to that point. But when it comes to just introducing kids to each other and talking about these expectations and how things might look different, any guidance for families going through that right now?
Some of the things that we talk about, I know, is related to just because you love this other person, your family or your children may not be as willing to jump that far emotionally into this relationship right off the bat. So you want to give them time. You want to give them the space that they need to kind of get used to that idea. And also, especially if you're thinking about like older kids, they may not want to develop that sort of relationship with them. And so you want to talk about just, you don't have to love them, but respect, right? Respect them as a human being, respect them as a part of the family unit. And so having those kinds of conversations in terms of, I think, introductions, yeah, I would definitely say you don't want them to be meeting each other for the first time on move-in day. You're going to want, when you start getting serious about this other person, if you're dating and then you're feeling like you're starting to get serious with this person, but long before those conversations around moving in together, you would start introducing them into your children's lives. And then hopefully they would have those chances to spend time together and get used to each other.
And it's so important also just in sibling relationships in general, just building trust and, having good relationships, hopefully with your siblings. But when it comes to step siblings or, the kids you're bringing into the house, are there ways to try to, facilitate trust and relationship building you're absolutely, not everybody's going to, be on board first day, but are there some things that parents can do to try to facilitate the growth of the relationship between siblings or step siblings?
Nothing feels better than feeling your best, which is why Maine Health continues to provide Northern New England with the best network of people, programs, and resources working to help you be your healthiest self. And by doing so, we're creating different paths and giving you options in personal wellness. That's health and care in harmony. That's Maine Health. To learn more, go to mainehealth.org/harmony.
Yeah, I know one of the things that I've seen parents do that have been relatively successful or have heard about people doing is um, having, it's that getting to know each other ahead too. So again, before move-in day, start developing those relationships. So have also not just the partner coming and visiting, but also their children. Maybe do like a barbecue or do a beach day or something together all as a unit to see how those dynamics can play out among all of the children, see which children maybe get along, which children maybe don't get along, so that you can try to facilitate helping them. Like if they're not getting along, what is it that's causing those problems? What's causing that conflict? And can you help that out some? And I also know that it can be helpful um, for parents to some children want to be able to still have that one-on-one time with their primary parent. And so maybe, letting them know that just because you're blending these families, you're still available for that time for them. You're still able to do things. Maybe you schedule a dinner night out or going out to the movies or just some small activity where each parent does something with their children individually so that they can still foster that sense of belonging, I guess, with their own family and not have to force in or have those uncomfortable situations that they're still trying to get used to the other siblings.
You touched on this a little bit too, just this idea of what are the parenting dynamics, but specifically co-parenting dynamics with, say, an ex-partner in the context of a blended family. I mean, that can get very complex. What advice do you have for parents who are navigating that whole situation?
That's like a whole
That's a tough one.
that's another
Right. We
whole
can deep dive into just that question
yeah,
probably.
that's another whole thing. But yeah, co-parenting out with parents that are outside of the home and also inside of the home. And then you have kids that are kind of going back and forth in some situations where there's joint custody. So you may have some of the kiddos, for instance, maybe they're full time because maybe, mom has full custody and dad doesn't, or the other way, dad has full custody and the mom doesn't. And so some kids are in the home pretty much 100% of the time. And then some kids are in the home a less percentage of the time because they're at their other home during that time. So that creates additional issues and conflict. And also then with that, like you mentioned, comes in the other parent outside and communicating and co-parenting with them as well. So that adds another whole layer of things. So I think trying to co-parent with the parent outside of the home as so it's basically in essence like you've got three, maybe four people in this kind of co-parenting dynamic. And it's a lot of voices and it's a lot of input. So it's trying to, again, have those conversations, be on the same page with people as much as possible, take in the input from everybody, and hopefully you have um, amicable relationships with those outside parents.
Yeah, and see, of course, that's sometimes way easier said than done, but just, refocusing on that the children are the most important part within this and hopefully putting some differences aside. I, that's easier said than done. emotions running high, and boy, that is can be very challenging. Just talking about reactions though, and just emotions, I wonder too some of the common emotional reactions children have during this transitional time, and how parents can support them.
There have been a lot of different studies around kind of the emotional impact that divorce and relationships breaking up have on children. The primary takeaway from most of those is that it does have an effect, but if the children feel safe and supported during that process, that effect is mitigated. So it's a matter of trying to make sure that they're getting their emotional needs met through the process. That you're being open and honest with them. That you're being clear. That you are letting them know that they are still loved and that they are still important, and all of these things. And it's best if it can be coming from both parents. So not just mom, but also dad. And hopefully you're not, ideally, you wouldn't be transitioning into a blended family immediately at the same time that you're going through that initial separation or divorce process. Sometimes that does happen, though. Sometimes you're leaving this one place and immediately blending into this other family. I think then it would be even more important to be giving that support to your children, because that's a lot of change all happening at once. It's a little bit easier if you can kind of get them used to the change of the parents having split up and now being separated. And then they have a little bit of time to get used to that and kind of get settled into that before adding in another whole change.
Yeah, giving them a runway to process. What about, just that idea, like, how should parents handle, uh, maybe it's called loyalty conflicts? I mean, I'm sure that comes up, where children might experience that between their biological and their step parents, just navigating that loyalty a parent may have to their biological children versus stepchildren.
Yeah. I think just being clear about that, in that, especially if you're blending a family, being clear that, um, you know, this is, if it's a guy coming in, you're not like, this person is taking the place of your dad. This person is now your dad. It's no. And I think that comes along with that piece that we talked about in terms of like, even like disciplining and things like that. The role that the primary parent has still stays with that parent. And if you're in a co-parenting situation with their other parent, they continue their role. So like, for instance, I am a single mom, and my ex-spouse and I share custody of our minor children. And so he's remarried and has a new wife, but she really isn't in a parenting role in our children. They are a little older; they're teenagers. She's there. She might give them rides, places. They are at her house with him, but she doesn't do really any mothering of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I am fine with that, and I don't put them in the middle too. So, like, I think the adults have to be aware of that and not try to pit the children against each other.
Right. But so go back to your example. I mean, you're living this, right? Like,
Yeah.
how much of a say should you have in the role the new wife has when it comes to the act of actually parenting your children
Right.
when they're over at their house?
Yeah. And so that's a conversation. I would have that with their dad. So their dad and I would have a conversation around what I'm comfortable with and what he's comfortable with. And hopefully you can be adult or amicable enough to have those conversations together, because it really is about the children. So I want for them to be able to feel welcome there. And I don't want them to have, like you said, that loyalty conflict, thinking that they have to be mean to her, let's say, because they don't want to hurt my feelings. And so I try to make them aware that, oh, no, no, this is your dad's wife, your stepmother, essentially. She deserves respect. She deserves kindness. So the expectation is there that you're going to treat her with respect and kindness, and just kind of like that sort of thing. And so him and I have conversations around this is, what is appropriate and what isn't appropriate. Because our kids are teenagers, she really doesn't need to do a lot for them. It is different when you have really little kids, because, in those types of situations, you're looking at, they might be doing bedtimes, they might be doing a lot more hands-on parenting. So
Right, teaching the difference between right and wrong. I mean, I have a almost 6-year-old, so we have lots of conversations like that just naturally, and we're teaching him, our ideals as he's growing up. So, right, so when you're in a blended family situation, it is so important for everybody to be on the same page with you are guiding this child to,
yeah,
the
and
next
that
phase of their life and
is something
beyond.
that you have to be aware of. And I think, again, it's the adults in the situation are the ones that need to be having those conversations with each other, and then setting the example for the children.
One thing too, I think is we're trying, parents trying to create this like a healthy family situation with a blended family is tradition, right? So what are some ways that blended families can sort of redefine traditions, make their own traditions in their households that it's different maybe, but just as special?
Yeah. So, I mean, you obviously, there's every family's different, and you can come up with your own agreed upon plans for how holidays work and how traditions work. And, for some families, certain holidays are more important than other holidays. So it might be that, if, let's say, Thanksgiving, for example, is very, very important to you, but like the 4th of July isn't as important. But the other family, like for at dad's house, the 4th of July is kind of a big deal. So then you have those conversations around, okay, well, I really would like them here, and you can have them here. And then you can also make your own traditions and things that aren't like, I have certain things in the summer that I personally, with my own family as a child, went to events and festivals and things like that. And I've always brought my children to that. I continue to do that outside of, their father, because that wasn't his tradition anyway. It's not really a holiday. It's just more of a family tradition. It's a family tradition in my family. So I continue that, and my kids and I still do that. And it might look a little bit different. Sometimes we bring extra people, sometimes we don't, but that kind of thing. And then at their dad's, he likes to go do specific things with them at certain dates. And so again, we communicate with each other around, hey, this event is coming up and happening. And we're respectful of the fact that that is important to the other parent and also to your children, because it's part of how something that they've done, and then kind of allowing for those and giving that space.
I wonder, like, there's a lot of stress that can come with blending families. So, how can parents prioritize their own mental health and well-being, and frankly, make sure the marriage stays strong while managing the complexities of blending a family?
Yeah, that can be the hard part, because if you think about it, initially with your like initial family, the first family, generally speaking, the mom and dad are together for a little while before a child comes into that equation. So you have that time beforehand. But when you're talking about a blended family, there's children already immediately there. So you're trying to get um, that bond in that space, and you're trying to connect with somebody, and build that relationship while also actively parenting, possibly multiple children. So that can be really, really difficult. So I think, again, spending time together as a couple whenever possible. If you do have significant others that both have the children at times, maybe trying to schedule it so that all of the children are gone at the same time, instead of having always somebody there, so that you have that one-on-one time to be able to do things. Um, Counseling is, always a good option. Relationship counseling, family counseling, those sorts of things can be really, really helpful. But yeah, definitely making time for yourselves and making time for each other is should be a priority.
So what are some signs that, this blended family it's working? Like, what are the signs that, hey, I think we've got this figured out? And then on the flip side, what are some red flags that, boy, we do need to seek additional help or address this sooner than later?
Yeah. So I think some of the positive signs would be, are the kids seeming to get along well? Are things going smoothly? I think it's easier to see the hard thing. When things are hard, it's easier to notice them. But if things are kind of running smoothly and things seem to be going okay and the kids are getting along and life seems to just be kind of moving along normally, that would be a good sign. That would be a good indicator that things are going well and going smoothly. Um, on the flip side of that, there are, it's kind of the opposite. Is there a lot of jealousy among the children? Is there any like signs that they're really, really unhappy? Is the emotional, piece, are some of the kids getting to the point where they're having a lot of difficulty with this? Are you not getting enough support from the other parent? Like you feel like you're kind of parenting alone, all of the kids, and you're not getting support from the other parent. If this seems like nobody's communicating with each other well, like these are all kind of signs that you should, take another look, step back, and try something, something else, maybe therapy.
Well, it comes back full circle to what we started with. It's just that communication and expectations are so key. Shannan, if there was one takeaway for families, for parents who are navigating a blended family right now, what would that be?
One takeaway is hard. I would say just communication, really. Work on it, and not just, again, like I said, not just between you and your significant other, but also to the children and also to any other outside co-parents parenting. The more communication, the more that everybody can be on the same page, the more that everybody can be supporting the children, and the more successful things will be.
Yeah, putting the health and the safety, the wellness of the kids first and foremost.
Right. The ultimate goal is for the kids to be healthy and happy. So
absolutely. Shannan, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time today. I want to mention too, we'll have some more resources in the show notes, as well as our website, wgme.com/raisingme. Shannan, thank you.
Yes, thank you for having me.
This is tough stuff. I mean, no getting around it, especially when emotions are running high. But as Shannan kept reminding us, communication is so key here, putting the kids' overall health and wellness first, and just having those realistic, that was a key word she used, realistic expectations through it all. One part I did write down was, just because you love this new person, it doesn't mean your kids will or other family members will. If they do, great. I mean, that's fantastic. But they may need time. They may need a lot of it. But to Shannan's point, while they don't have to love this person right now, you can remind them that respect is expected. So many dynamics in all of it. Thank you to Shannan of the G.E.A.R Parent Network here in Maine for her expertise, and to you for listening. I'm Adrienne Stein. This episode is edited by Megan Littlefield and produced with Nate Eldridge. Thank you also to our sponsor, Maine Health, and please follow Raising Me wherever you get your podcasts, and consider a positive rating and review so others can find this message as well. Wherever you are, I hope you learned something new and get to take a little time for you.